Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to unpack one of the most visceral, flat-out, incredible true stories of human survival you will ever hear. We're diving into the harrowing journey of the Chilean miners, a story that had the entire globe holding its breath back in 2010. We're going to break down exactly how this disaster unfolded, how these men managed to stay alive in completely impossible conditions, and the monumental rescue effort it took to bring them back up to the surface.
Picture this for a second. You're heading to work on a completely normal morning. You step into a mine, grab your gear, ready to knock out your daily shift, and then, within seconds, the absolute unthinkable happens. Hundreds of thousands of tons of solid rock suddenly cave in, completely sealing you inside the earth. Once the dust settles, you're left in total, utter darkness. No ambient noise, just this overwhelming, heavy silence.
Down there in the pitch black, you've got no cell service, no emergency exits. You are entirely cut off from the outside world. And here's the truly devastating reality. The world up above almost certainly thinks you died in the collapse. But you're still alive. Now, your ultimate test is surviving in this subterranean prison, not just for a day, and not just for a week, but as we're going to see, for an agonizing 69 days.
Part 1. The Sudden Collapse, August 5th, 2010.
So, on that fateful August day, 33 miners were inside the mine working their regular shift. Without any warning whatsoever, a massive rock collapse hit. In literally an instant, the shifting earth blocked every single known escape route, trapping all 33 men together.
Now, to really wrap our heads around the stakes here, we have to look at the depth. These men were trapped over 700 meters down. That's about 2,300 feet below the surface. They were buried under hundreds of thousands of tons of rock, with absolutely no clue if anyone topside even knew they had survived the initial cave-in.
Part 2. Surviving the Darkness. Life in the Emergency Shelter. Okay, so the men actually managed to find their way to a small emergency shelter in the mine. But they quickly realized their food supply is almost completely gone. They had to manage their rapidly depleting resources with unbelievable discipline. They meticulously divided what little they had left into equal thirds, a tiny amount of tuna, some biscuits, and a little milk. They stretched these rations so thin that each man was getting just a couple of spoonfuls of food a day. And for hydration, they had to rely entirely on water they scavenged from underground sources.
But physical survival was really only half the battle. Maintaining their mental state was just as critical. They knew that giving in to panic in a confined space like that would be a death sentence, so they set up these rigorous, sanity-saving routines. Every single day they cleaned their living area, they prayed, and they exercised. They figured out pretty quickly that to survive mentally, they needed structure. So day in and day out, they stuck to the routine, just hoping rescuers were getting closer.
Part 3. A Message to the World. Reaching the Surface.
For 17 agonizing days, the world had absolutely zero idea whether these 33 men were dead or alive. Just imagine the psychological toll that took. Families desperately waiting up at the surface, the men waiting down in the dark. 17 days of total, deafening silence. And then finally, a breakthrough. Rescuers on the surface managed to drill a really small, narrow hole deep into the mountain, basically hoping against hope to intercept the area where the miners might have taken refuge. And when they pulled that long drill back up to the surface, they made a shocking, truly miraculous discovery.
Attached to the drill was a note. It contained 8 legendary words. "We are well in the shelter, the 33. I mean, wow. Those words sent shockwaves across the entire globe. Millions of people celebrated the incredible news that against all odds, all 33 men had survived the collapse. The world finally knew they were alive.
Part 4. The Greatest Rescue. Bringing them home. So, knowing they're alive is one thing. Getting them out is another. The rescue effort instantly goes into overdrive. Engineers worked relentlessly, day and night, pooling all their expertise to figure out how to extract these men through a super narrow shaft. Their solution? Build a highly specialized, custom-designed rescue capsule, which they perfectly named the Phoenix.
Looking at this timeline, the sheer length of this claustrophobic nightmare is just hard to fathom. You start with the terrifying collapse on day 1, endure complete isolation until being discovered on day 17, and then they had to wait weeks more while the actual rescue shaft was drilled. The whole thing culminated in their extraction on day 69.
69 days trapped underground. When the moment of truth finally arrived, one by one, the miners stepped into that Phoenix capsule and were slowly winched to the surface. It was monumental, broadcast live all over the world. Viewers everywhere watched as the men emerged to cheering crowds and families just crying tears of absolute joy.
And honestly, here is the most remarkable statistic of this entire event. 0 deaths. Every single one of the 33 miners was rescued safely without a single casualty. Between the engineering marvel of the Phoenix and the sheer, stubborn endurance of the men themselves, it went down as one of the most successful rescue operations in human history.
Part 5. The Power of Teamwork. Why they survived.
So how did they pull off the impossible? Well, the Chilean miners survived for a few core reasons. First, they stayed absolutely united as a group. They didn't turn on each other or fight over their meager resources. They shared those tiny spoonfuls of food. They supported each other's sanity by sticking to their daily routines of cleaning, praying, and exercising. And above all else, they just refused to give up hope. Their survival wasn't just physical, you see. It was deeply psychological and deeply communal. Which leaves us with this final, profound thought to chew on. When disaster strikes, when the metaphorical or literal mountain collapses on top of you, what's your greatest asset? Because as this explainer shows, the greatest survival tool on Earth isn't always individual strength. Sometimes it's the unbreakable power of teamwork. The engineering and psychological studies that came out of this event literally changed rescue operations forever. So ask yourself, are you relying purely on your own strength, or are you building a team that could survive the dark?